Okay, so this one, I just figured something out, is because I've been talking with the Sams, because they help me with this a lot, because I don't see all the parts of myself. They can show me some parts that I didn't see. So in my last video, or upload, I made, actually the last few, maybe all of my previous uploads, I've had a lot of examples of the thing that I'm trying to get rid of. Either there's an inauthenticity about it, or I'm not being accurate about representing myself. Because I'll say, oh yeah, I'm all about creation, but then I try to destroy all of the people that are trying to destroy other people, which itself is a paradox, which is the whole point that I was trying to demonstrate, which I did. But the problem is I didn't show the solution. I just showed the problem. So the problem is that paradox. The problem is you cannot hate anybody without hating yourself and without having destruction to yourself and without having destruction to whatever cause it is that you're trying to protect. No one ever solved a problem by creating another one. Not even Charles. The Hegelian dialectic that he uses or they use you invent a problem which the population reacts to, and then you implement your solution because they're in a panic state, so they'll accept whatever it is that you say. And the classic example of the Hegelian dialectic is the mob, the mafia coming up to your door, and they knock and they say, hey, has anybody you guys have any problem with people coming in and busting up the place, stealing everything, breaking people's legs, any of that kind of thing? And of course, the store owner, the first time he gets asked that, he's like, no. Oh, okay, well then I'll just break your legs and bust up the place and steal everything so that, the next time that I ask you that question, you'll say, yeah, in fact, I have had that problem. Oh, okay, so then what is the reaction to that? Well, you want to be safe, right? Okay, well, how about I offer my services of protection to you for a fee, and you just give me 10% of everything that you make from here on in. And that 10% will then ensure that you don't have your legs broken and your store isn't broken into and people don't steal your shit anymore, even though it was obviously me who stole it in the first place. So by that method, Charles has enslaved us. So how do we get out of that problem? Well, we have to stop breaking each other's legs and busting into each other's stores and stealing all each other's shit, and then offering our services of protection on the flip side to say, if you pay me, then I will stop doing it, which is what I have been doing. So I've been demonstrating the problem even inside my own system. And I think that serves so many purposes, because one of the things that I really like about these uploads is that it should show not only that I'm human, but also that there's a bridge out of that you don't have to stay in there. I know what it is to be in there. Obviously, I've demonstrated that. But how do you get out? So the easiest way is you have to understand the mechanics of evil. So when you feel that evil in you, or I guess I can only say when I feel that evil in me, and then that way you can rationalize to yourself that since you aren't me, that you've never felt any emotion that I've ever felt, and that everything that I am about to say is completely irrelevant. You can just dismiss it, which is, of course, the problem. The reaction to that problem, where you just dismiss everything that I say because it makes you feel bad, and then you comfort yourself with the lie that I'm somehow completely alien from you and that I'm not actually a person like you are, and that we can't be interchanged in any scenario, let alone a useful one. The comfort that you get from that is in a nihilistic, cynical, destructive rest, where you say, everything is inherently evil. The world is just a fucked up place. People are sick and stupid and sad. And, I'm just not going to pay any attention to it. And I'm just going to dismiss everything unless it makes me feel good for that time, which I won't invest anything in, because cynically, I just believe that the entire world is a bunch of bullshit And even if it does make me feel good for the moment, it won't last, or it's coming from an ulterior motive, or something about it is flawed. And the reason that that happens is because that kind of person doesn't think. They just feel bad, and then they rationalize, if at all, anything about that to just keep doing it, rather than trying to fix the situation, simply by not having a faith in a good, just world, in the innate goodness of existence itself. So the cure is the opposite of the disease. The disease is faithlessness. If I don't have faith in you, I'll attack you. I'll get rid of you because you won't serve my purpose. So I obviously just have to get rid of you, right? Just like you just said to me, those of you who did that. And then we're in total agreement, except we both hate each other, and we both dismissed each other, and we both depersoned each other, and we both acted like the other one just shouldn't even exist. So I guess we're both right then. We just picked the wrong targets and missed again, huh? Huh. Funny how that keeps happening. So I think the problem is actually not the solution. I think that instead of it being the case that there is this group of people who are not people, that there are somehow people that are just pure evil or purely crazy or purely stupid, and therefore can't be good, honest, and real, and that's the lie. That's the whole problem that I have found with myself and with the world, is every single evil act begins with an unfaithful heart. Every single evil act begins with cynicism and faithlessness and purposelessness and despair and angst and anger and sadness and loneliness and hatred and anger and fear. No one ever succeeded with that kind of a mentality, even if they get some objective success through money or fame or something like that. They will not feel fulfilled unless they believe in a just world. If the world is unjust, any success I might have in it is tainted by that injustice. And then I end up being Thrasymachus, and I end up positing the notion that only the strong survive, and the only mechanism that's at play is blind, naked, ruthless evolution. And that is a disease. That's not a legitimate position. The reason it's not legitimate is because it's nihilistic, which is self-refutational. Nihilism says there is no value to anything, which means that it's saying that there's no value to itself. A person who believes in an unjust world believes themselves to be unjust. They just rationalize the necessity of that injustice. That's what you'll notice every single time that you accuse an unjust person of being unjust, is they'll have an excuse. They'll have a rationalization for why that's okay. But they'll never tell themselves or anyone else, if they're honest and authentic, that what they did was actually good. They'll say that it led to goodness, or that the consequence was relatively good compared to other effects from other people or other causes that other people tout. In an unjust world where there is not justice at the end of the day, so that the goodness that they claim is temporary and limited to some specific scenario that they are describing, in which they invariably are a victim of an unjust world. Every single time it's like that. Every act of evil begins with a faithless heart. And I don't mean an unchristian heart. And I don't mean an undogmatic heart. I mean an unfaithful one. I mean one that doesn't believe that there are always other people that have goodness in their heart, even if they do an evil act. And the classic example is hating child molesters. It is so easy to hate pedophiles. The pedophiles are like the targeted group. They're the Jews of the world now. It used to be that everybody hated the Jews. Now they all hate pedophiles. But it's the same problem. It's just moved to a different target. But it's exactly the same mechanism. There is a group of people who are not people. There is, some kind of a group that should never have existed, that the sole purpose of which is to be obliterated, to be gotten rid of, that they should never have been born, they should not exist now, and the only travesty is that they continue to breathe. So those feelings, those views are not just held by Nazis. They're held by every single being in existence. And every single being in existence at some point in their life will feel some of that evil, which is to say that they will lose their faith in something having some value. Usually it's something horrendous, like a child being raped. And the reason that's the go-to is because the child is invariably seen as being innocent and pure. And the adult is seen as being responsible and therefore aware of corruption, aware of evil, and is supposed to be leading the child toward goodness, or at the very least, just leaving them alone, but is instead abusing their power over this innocent person and exploiting them for their own selfish gain, for a temporary increase in their own pleasure of some kind. And then we go further and we extend that and we say, not only is that act completely worthless, the person who committed it is worthless as well. That's where we make the error. Because while it is possible to judge an act, and we have to, in order to define what a crime is, we have to define acts as evil. We have to judge those. We don't have to judge the person who committed it. This is where we make the error. So when someone has an unfaithful heart, it isn't about Christianity. It isn't about God. It's about having faith in all people, having at least some goodness, at least somewhere in their heart, and that therefore they don't deserve to be destroyed. They are not completely worthless. There is some merit to their existence. There is some value in them continuing to breathe, that there's a purpose for their existence even now. That is a faithful heart. When we have a faithful heart, we tend to do things better, irregardless of what they are that we're doing. And it's smoother and it's more joyful. It is easier to get involved in. It's more fun. When we have a cynical, unfaithful heart, and we don't believe that every single person, regardless of what they have done, is intrinsically a good person because they were created by God, and God is good, and creating is therefore good because God did it. And since we are created from that act, then we are good because we're part of what God did, and God is good. And that's how I do it. It's real simple, but you have to believe in God to do that. So if you don't believe in God, then you can say, I'm going to find intrinsic value to my own existence because I enjoy existing. Now, if I don't enjoy existing, that's when I start to believe in an unjust world. That's when I start to believe that there are people out there that just shouldn't exist. That's when I start getting the urge to destroy things that are in existence instead of the urge to create. Because I don't have enough faith to sustain a creation. I don't know that creation itself even has value. Maybe I'm a utilitarian and I just value things in terms of what their utilization for me is, or at the very least, the utilization for someone else. And so then I just reduce people's lives to a number. There's 5 people on this train, and one of them is fat. And if I push them onto the train tracks and kill that one guy, I'll save 4 of the other people. And 4 is greater than 1, and therefore I toss the fat guy off the train. The problem with that mentality is it inherently presumes that the world is either unjust or that it doesn't have any justice built into it innately because it has no intrinsic value. And that argument is really the thing that I have been attacking, but I should just define it, because I think its definition is enough to dissuade its membership from being members. So the reason that I don't believe that the world is unjust is because it's never helped me to do so. And I've gotten to a point in my life where I had done that to such a degree that I actually logically rationalized why everything should cease and that there should be nothing but nothing as far as the eye can see. Why? Because I did not choose to be here. I did not choose to exist in this world. I didn't pick this place. I just got put here. And when I started to think like that, I couldn't come up with a rational reason for why existence was intrinsically valuable, because it was thrust upon me and it violated my consent. I would have preferred having to choose between my rough ass life, because I'm missing 3 teeth. I've lost everything. Teeth, my mind, my soul, my belief in God, everything. I've lost everything in my life before. And at that lowest point, that's when I did. I threw existence away and I said, I would have preferred to have never have been born. And I find existing itself to be a crime. And I think that it is unjust for any God or anything to have thrust existence upon the non-existent. So that if I had not existed at all, I would have been better off, because I wouldn't have had to suffer. That all these kids that get raped all the time and thrown away, they should have just not been born. Why would they have been forced to have lived through that? And how can you justify that? And there's the problem of evil argument. There's lots of arguments for nihilism that work like that. And almost all of them look at the effect of things. They say there's so much evil acts out there. There's so many evil acts out there that there must be evil people. And if there are evil people and they exist, then clearly existence can't be intrinsically valuable, because it allows that. It allows people to rape kids. So then how can you argue for it if it lets people rape kids? And so for the longest time, I had this building and building and building up of resentment about that, about the fact that all these horrendous acts constantly occur, all these wars, and the cynical way, not only that they start, but that they're fought and that they get resurrected again later on somewhere else. There's not really any pattern of us evolving. It just seems to be this hot mess that you just get thrust into, that you're just another leaf blowing in the wind like every other leaf. That it gets to the point where people start dismissing freedom of will altogether, and they start arguing for determinism, knowing Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, and they'll still argue for it. And it blows my mind. It's like the same people that know that the laws of physics themselves forbid determinism, and they still believe it, because it's such a powerful, compelling emotion to hate existence, because you didn't get to quote unquote choose before you got born. And that one fact alone, that you had no choice to exist now, and that you still feel compelled to exist, that there's something that isn't you that's keeping you alive. And you're somehow intrinsically aware of that. And that fact, that alienates you from whatever it is that's pushing you into existence. You don't want to exist, but yet you keep existing. There are suicides whose heart continues to beat all the way up until they pull the trigger. Why? That's so pointless, right? That kind of mindset, I really get it. And I've delved all the way down to the root of it. And the root of it says, and this is the scariest part of all, there is no way to rationally argue that existence has any value at all, no matter what argument you choose, even if you say something about God, because how do we justify God's decision to make us exist this way when we have all this evil here, when we feel so much suffering that we did not choose to feel, and for the most part didn't even earn or deserve? How then can we say that God is good for having done that to us, other than by just saying, I don't know, and then just being obedient to our feudal lord like we used to do in the past and say, well, God's a king, so kings do what kings do, eh? All right, moving on. That's not really an answer. That's just sort of a dismissal, or like, I have better things to do than waste my time with that because it's so scary and I don't know what to do with it. It's not an answer, it's a dismissal. So if we really grapple with it, there is an answer, but you have to assume it. This is the problem. This is the leap of faith that you have to have, the distinguishing factor between those of us who choose nihilism and evil and those of us who choose goodness, despite the fact that we all feel the same feelings. There are so many people that say that, no, I alone know what I feel like, therefore I alone have ever felt these things. Said every teenager ever born. Everybody feels the same emotions. We just feel the same emotions about different things. So when we get presented with the same stuff, we have different reactions. That doesn't mean that those reactions are completely different. It means that the thing that we're reacting to, we approached it in a different way. It doesn't mean that the thing is any different because it's the same thing. And it doesn't mean that we're any different because we're the same people. People are people. It's the way that we approached it that changed. And there's really only two ways of approaching everything: optimistically or pessimistically. Or as I like to put it, nihilistically instead of pessimistically. Because pessimism says, I despair at this. Nihilism says, I just recognize things for what they are. And nihilism is kind of brave in that way, because it's not pessimism. Nihilism is just saying that things should not exist because they came from nothing, and they are then invariably doomed back to going back to nothing. So that there really isn't any point, because everything just ends up as being nothing anyway. When I die, everything that I've ever done will be forgotten. There's not one facet of my existence that will survive my death. Eventually, there will be nothing left of me. So then why should I ever have bothered to exist if I was just going to end up as nothing? And it's because of this that's happening now. This is the point. And if you don't believe in it, then yeah, your default is going to be nihilism, because you're going to be looking at the before and the after, but not the during. During your existence, you can change, and that change impacts other people so that they can change. And the change is the thing that is intrinsically valuable to existence. Non-existence never changes. The past never changes. And if you go far enough in the future, that never changes. What do they say in Fight Club? If you, on a long enough timetable, the survival rate to everyone drops to zero. In other words, it is inevitable that everything falls to shit. It doesn't matter what you're talking about. Even the physical universe will eventually die. Every particle in existence will eventually die, and it will dissipate and turn into just nothing but heat. And even the heat will die, and we'll have heat death. And even that will die. And it will turn from a diffuse potential energy into a condensed, infinitely dense ball of mass, which is the state of timelessness and spacelessness, which is the necessary conclusion of nothing but 0-point energy with no particles, just 0-point energy. Why? Because 0-point energy is a constantly fluctuating field whose overall energy is zero. Meaning that if you were to look at it as a global unit, it is static globally. It is only locally fluctuating. The parts change, but they always come back to zero. If you were to take every single fluctuation in the 0-point energy field and add them all up, it would all add up to zero. So it's as if it does not exist. Now, what that does is it creates a static inertial momentum, which then condenses into an infinite ball of mass, which then, having condensed, rebounds and explodes and turns into a universe. During that rebound, during that explosion period, that's life. That's what happens during existence. That's what happens during the change and transformation of what makes something what we call real or existent. And we can either assume that the value of this whole process is either in that explosion, in the rebound, or we can believe that the value is in the state that was immediately before that and immediately after that, which is that state where everything is just 0-point energy, which is as close to nothing being nothing that you can get. It is, in fact, the state of indiscernibility, which is the necessary consequence of nothing being. So what that means is that no matter what we do, that is the process, that we start from nothing. We get 0-point energy from nothing because of what I call an iteration of nothing, which is basically just nothing happening. And when nothing happens, when there is a happening, and that's all there is a happening, that is indiscernible. Whatever that is, we can't discern it because that's all there is. And in order to have discernibility, you have to have a multiplicity, at least two reference, in order to discern. So you can contrast what is not from what is. But when everything is the same thing, that, whatever that is indiscernible. So when nothing happens, there is only the happening, not the nothing, because nothing is nothing. So when nothing happens, then there is a happening. That happening happens to be, necessarily is indiscernibility, which is 0-point energy. So 0-point energy is where we start and end, because you can't go further than that and then still have space and time, because there's no way to discern one space from another or one time from another. And that's why the before and the after are the exact same state. Now, our creation happens from the state of a 0-point energy field where everything is just 0-point energy, which is diffuse heat. If you really wanted to be specific about what that is, it's the diffusion of heat. And the heat is caused from change, because all energy is change. And the change happens locally because indiscernibility has to locally change in order to retain its indiscernibility. Because if it was locally static, you could discern it. If it stayed the same and it was static, you could discern one part from another. But because they're always all fluctuating, there's no way to tell one part from another, because you can't really tell if there's no edges. If there's no edges, it all kind of bleeds into one thing. So locally, yeah, you'll have these little waves, but overall, all those waves cancel out. And so then you end up with a static global unit, because if indiscernibility as a global totality changed, it could only change into discernibility or nothing. So globally, as a total unit, indiscernibility has to be static so that its energy output is 0. But it also has to have local fluctuations, because if the local parts were static, then you could tell one part from another. So just so that indiscernibility can retain its indiscernibility, there has to be a globally static, locally fluctuating field, which is the 0-point energy field. And indiscernibility, being the necessary result of nothing being, or nothing happening, is the result of happening. And happening happens because it can, in my opinion. Now, that's where we really have to draw a hard line. We will never know why things happen. We can always speculate, but we can never prove causation. We can prove correlation, but we cannot prove causation. So if we take my view, it is real because it's not impossible, and things tend to converge. There's a natural tendency for convergence in things, in every system. Even nothing can be considered as a system because it's a totality. So we can consider that totality. But in our consideration of that totality, we destroy the thing that it's supposed to be a totality of, because nothing is so fragile that if you even add yourself in an observer position of it, it ceases to be nothing. You can't observe nothing. You cannot observe, but you can't observe nothing. So that is one of the reasons that there's also indiscernibility, is because there is such a thing as discernibility. And why does that exist? Again, because it can, because it's not impossible. And I go even further than that, and I say the reason that it can is because God sustains everything by affirming everything before it ever existed. And those affirmations will then converge into possibilities and diverge into impossibilities. And that's my explanation for it, but that's just my little story. It's a little myth that I tell myself to keep track of everything and to evaluate stuff. And it fits well from my perspective. But unfortunately, I have to take into account nihilism's very clear point that just because I discern it doesn't mean it's there. It just means that it's perceived by me to be there. That could be an illusion. And most likely, considering the infinitude of alternatives, it is. So we could only speculate as to how this cycle ever began or who ever began it. But what we can be certain of is the cycle. Then we have to decide, which side are we on? Are we on the side of certainty and inevitability, which always comes at the beginning and the end of every cycle? Or do we like the change, the spontaneity, and the novelty that happens in between? And those are the two sides. And you can either choose one or the other. If you're a mass shooter type, you like the certainty, because that's how you're measuring everything in existence, is against that certainty. I've really read into these incel people, these mass shooter people, these far lefties. All these people have the same thing in common. They're trying to say whatever they're saying because of certainty, because either there's a lack of it or a presence of it, and then they justify their position based off that. The rest of us use uncertainty, the benefit of the doubt, the possibility of a better future, the risk of losing what we already have. Those are all uncertainties. The certainties are simple. I will never survive forever. I will die. All of these other people will die. Everything in existence that I am aware of will all be obliterated. That is the mentality of a mass shooter. That is the mentality of a suicidal, homicidal, school shooting emo kid or whatever the fuck. And yeah, there's going to be some that are on the right. There's going to be some that are on the left. But it's the same argument. From the right, if you're going to come at it from the far right. So you've got that one dude that tried to break into the synagogue, right? And he had all of his homemade guns. So he was on the far right. And his thing was, well, the Jews are replacing the whites. So the certainty is that if this pattern continues of immigration, that there won't be any whites left. And that's the certainty. One day there will be no more whites. And I don't like that because I am white and I want my stuff to persist, but I know that it can't. So the best I can do is try to prolong that preservation as long as I can, to keep things as static and certain as I possibly can. And so I preserve what I can, how I can, in the way that I can. And that's his mentality. It's all about certainty. It's a certainty that whites will be replaced. It's a certainty that at some point there will be no more whites. And it's a certainty that I'm going to die one day anyway. And it's a certainty that all these people will too. And all these certainties put together end up making the synagogue attack. And it's the same kind of certainty that all the rest of them had. Even the first dude that ran over all those people, not the first dude, the first incel that shot up the fitness zone, LA Fitness, that shot up that LA Fitness place. And he's like the first incel mass shooter. His thing, because he was apolitical, was that he was certain that he couldn't ever get laid. And he was certain that the culture was just the way it was. And he was certain that there was something wrong with him, that everybody else saw that they would never tell him. And he used these certain words: never, always, anywhere, all the time, all of them. stuff like that. He would use certain terms over and over and over. Terms that, like I said, bespeak certainty. Always. Never. These are certain terms. Uncertain terms are sometimes, maybe, if, stuff like that. Certain terms are then. Not if, then. Not maybe, yes or no. Not sometimes, always, or never. Not a little bit, all of it. Not some of these guys, all these guys. You see what I'm saying? And those are the people that end up shooting up the place, because what they're doing is they're aligning with what comes before and after these cycles of creation and destruction, these cycles of emerging universes and dying universes, of being born and dying. And at the beginning and the end of those is always the same, non-existence. And specifically, indiscernibility. We don't know. The inability to discern. Okay, so that is where they're deriving everything that they are believing in. It is logically valid. That's why they're capable of all coming to the same conclusions as each other, despite all their political differences, despite their age differences, despite, in some cases, even their gender differences. They come to the same conclusion. Why? Because they're all stemming from the same root. And that root is uncertainty. And certainty kills. It doesn't give birth, it kills. Nothing in creation is certain. Everything in creation is uncertain. It's contingent. It depends. Sometimes it's like this and sometimes it's like that. And it depends on how you look at it. All of that stuff is uncertainty. That's where most of us root. And we will root there naturally, unless or until we're severed from that. And we lose our faith in other beings and other people in the world itself. And we start viewing either ourselves as the only people who are good, or our own group as the only group that's good, or our own cause as the only just cause, or whatever it is, and we exclude everything else. And that, again, certainty. It's all about certainty or uncertainty. If you're okay with uncertainty, then you're okay to sink, you can swim. If you're okay with tomorrow being unknown, then you're on the right track, because at least you have enough faith for that. At least you have enough faith to see the sunrise tomorrow, not knowing if it will, but you have faith, and then you can see it. But if you don't have faith, you're going to blow your fucking brains out tonight and you're never going to see that sunrise. That doesn't mean the sun didn't rise. It means you didn't see it. Those are two completely different things. See, that's the indiscernibility. I don't want to see it. I don't want to know. I don't want to be there. I don't want to know what's going on. I just want to be ignorant. I just want to not know. Indiscernibility. Refusal to do research. Refusal to understand the opposition. Refusal to engage the opposition. I don't want to. I want certainty. I don't want to have faith in my opposition like the rest of us do. And I say the rest of us because most people invariably in creation are going to side with creation. Most people in existence are going to side with existence. It's only some people sometimes that don't. And that can be cured. All we have to do is figure out what is it that's making this person feel like it's impossible to have faith in some group of people, usually. Or to be able to tolerate a world in which some act gets committed that they can't do anything about. Remember that the effect only is certain. And if we base our evaluation of creation upon destruction, or if we evaluate the way that this universe has bloomed into being based upon where it came from and where it's going, which is always the same, that's not going to tell us much. Vis-a-vis, which iteration are we in? Which cycle is this? How many times have we done this? We don't know. We'll never know. And that's the point. If you think that there's no point because we've either already done this a million times or we're just going to keep doing it again, a lot of people believe that. And I don't understand how you could even function that way. But there are people that do. That's back to certainty again. Because what they're claiming is we all came from indiscernibility. We're all going to indiscernibility. We're going to somewhere that we don't know where it is. And we came from someplace that we don't know where it is. And so it's indiscernibility. And so I'm just going to believe in that. and everything just gets extended into one giant amorphous blob of I don't know what the fuck this is. So you can either play that card and say I don't want to know what this is, I don't know what it is, and I don't want to know what it is, or you can play the other card of curiosity and say I do want to know what that is. I don't know what it is now, but I'd like to. I think that would be worth knowing, and then you can pursue that, and you can then discern it, and instead of it being indiscernible, it'll be discernible. The problem with discernibility that so many people shy away from that, because you'd think, well, that's simple. Why doesn't everybody do that? The reason is because there's a multiplicity of ways of discerning something. So just because I can discern it doesn't mean I'm going to come to the same conclusion that you do. Because I'm seeing the sun rise right now at 6:34 a.m. in the morning in the mountains. You might not see the sunrise. For you, it might not be rising. So when I say the sun is rising, that's not entirely accurate. It's rising for me, but that doesn't mean that it's rising for you. So that level of contingency means that somebody who likes certainty is going to look at that and say, that's just indiscernibility. Nobody knows whether the sun is rising or not then. It just doesn't mean anything. We may as well just not even say it. And they'll get frustrated and they'll just say it's not discernible, so therefore I just don't care. It's just another example of the same bullshit. So that's the difference, is if you can give faith to something you can't yet discern what it is, or at the very least you can't fully discern what it is. You can discern parts of it. You can recognize parts of it, but you might not be able to understand it completely, but you're still okay with it, then you've got a chance. But it's the moment where you sever that and you say, nope, I don't care. I'm not going to give it a chance. I'm cutting it off right fucking now. I'm done. I don't want to deal with it anymore. That's when you run into an issue. That's when there's a problem. So, that's what I'm trying to do with this movement I'm trying, and I'm not a saint, and I'm not perfect. I'm not God. So I do make mistakes, and I've made plenty, and I'm probably still making them now. But I have faith that tomorrow is going to come tomorrow, that somehow the sun will rise again, that I will get another chance, that there will be another tomorrow, that there will be another reason. And here's the final thing. How do we ever escape the indiscernibility crisis? We do what I just said. We discern. I believe it is possible to escape this universe, and even though this physical universe is doomed to heat death, we don't have to be in it. We can escape, and we can go to another universe, a fresh one, and we can do that forever. We don't have to die where we stand. We can move to a new place and start a new world. And that's what I believe in.